Hello and welcome everybody to today's episode of the JBA All-In Podcast.
Our podcast is currently streaming on Podbean and YouTube. The JBA All-In Podcast is your one-stop sports shop podcast for news around the sports world.
My name is Jack.
My name is Brendan.
And we're very excited to bring you today's 2020 NBA Playoff Special.
All right, let's jump right into the hot topic. We're going to be recapping all of the game ones that went down over the past 2 days. All 8 series played their game ones over the past 2 days. Let's start with the very first game on the very first day. Utah Jazz at Denver Nuggets. The final score was 135-125 in overtime. The score at the end of regulation was 115 all. Jack, any thoughts on this first game of the series? Is it going as you expected? Is there anything unexpected that went down?
I think it was actually a really good game. Obviously, the Nuggets played better in overtime with Donovan Mitchell getting a little cold. But, I don't think it was anything too special. It was just entertaining basketball, which is basically just the playoffs. But, I think it's going to be a really good series. I think they are playing today at 1 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to be a really good series. I think it was the Nuggets. Yeah, it was the Nuggets going through. I don't think you can write off the Jazz. I think they're going to keep fighting because it was a tie game up until in regulation up until overtime where the Nuggets pulled ahead. I think it's going to be a really interesting series, but I'm going to still stick with my original prediction that the Nuggets are going to win the series.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray both turned it on late. Jamal Murray a little bit more in overtime, which is why the Nuggets were able to pull out the victory. Donovan Mitchell still had a great game. He had 57 points along with 9 rebounds and 7 assists, so almost a triple-double. He shot 19 for 33 from the floor, was 6 for 15 from 3, and was 13 for 13 from the free throw line, playing 43 minutes. So Donovan Mitchell played an exceptional game, and Jamal Murray was able to turn it on in overtime, which is why the Nuggets were able to pull away with the victory, along with Nikola Jokic. He also had 29 for the Nuggets. Jamal Murray had 36. I should add, Jerami Grant coming off the bench had 19, and Monte Morris coming off the bench had 14. So Utah, they just needed to. I think they just need to get a little bit more out of their bench, with the exception of Jordan Clarkson. If you take him off, if he had ended up starting, the bench would have only scored 8 points. So the bench scored 8 points, except for Jordan Clarkson, who scored 18. They're giving their bench guys good minutes. They gave Tony Bradley. He had 10 minutes. Georges Niang, he had 19, and then Emmanuel Moody had 9. So, I think the Jazz bench just has to play a little bit better than it did. The Denver bench was very good. But if the Jazz bench can play better, then it would even. And I think they can even the series out today. Next game, Brooklyn Nets at Toronto Raptors. The Raptors won in a blowout, 24-point margin, 134-110. Stand-up performance on Fred VanVleet, 30 points and 11 assists, shooting 11 for 15 from the floor and 8 for 10 from 3. And then on the Brooklyn side of it, they're missing their star, Kyrie, going into this they were missing him going into the bubble. So they're kind of relying on Karis LeVert to be the number one option. But that game, their number one scorer with 26 points coming off the bench was Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. Sorry if I butchered that pronunciation, by the way. But they still did have good production out of their starters. LeVert had 15, Joe Harris had 19, Jarrett Allen had 15, and Garrett Temple had 12. So the Nets, they showed promise in that first game, but I think we all know which way the series is going to go. This should be a sweep by the Raptors. They are more talented by far. The Nets really only were able to make the playoffs because Kyrie was there for most of the season this year. This is just the Raptors are so much better than the Nets. This is most likely going to be a sweep.
Yeah, this game really wasn't a surprise, and you highlighted all the main points. The Nets are basically running their second-string or third-string players because they don't have their stars. But, they put up a valiant effort, and they showed promise. Karis LeVert is probably going to lead the team in this game, which is actually going on while we're filming right now. But, it's not really a surprise. Moving on to our next game, we have the 76ers losing to the Boston Celtics, 101-109. This wasn't really a surprise either. I think we all had the Celtics going through because the 76ers recently lost Ben Simmons, who's going down with a knee injury. So the 76ers, they're gonna have a hard time really being competitive in this series. And I think that they're gonna have a really hard time winning this one. But I think if they keep fighting and if Joel Embiid puts up crazy stat lines, I think they have a chance. But Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, Kemba, I don't think they can take them down, and I think the Celtics are easily moving through.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we each had them in 5 or 6 games going into the series. I think it was 5. Without Ben Simmons, it's going to be tough. Last night, Joel Embiid had 26 and 16. So he played well, and they also had Alec Burks playing really well coming off the bench. I think for them, I think Al Horford needs to play better. Only had 6 points, 0 for 1 from 3. I think he gets a little more opportunities in the 31 minutes that they are giving him. That could really benefit the Sixers, along with Matisse Thybulle. He only took 3 shots last game in 32 minutes of play. I think he might need to get some more opportunities in order to make an impact. And then the Boston side of things, they're a very good team. Kemba is obviously amazing. He had 19 points and 5 assists, which you might consider an off game also because he went over 4 from 3. So he actually kind of had an off game. But Tatum and Jalen Brown both made up for it. Jalen Brown scoring 29, Jason Tatum scoring 32, along with 13 rebounds. So I think the Celtics were playing really well, but I think the Gordon Hayward injury that happened, we all know about that. Gordon Hayward could miss 4 weeks with his ankle sprain. Not a good sign for Gordon Hayward. So he's definitely going to be out for the rest of the season, no question. I think that could have an impact on the series and maybe how competitive the Sixers can make it, because the Celtics bench, they scored 8 points last night, just the entire bench. Every single one of them, not like eliminating someone like I did with Jordan Clarkson, just the entirety of the bench. Grant Williams, Enes Kanter, Robert Williams, Romeo Langford, Marcus Smart, Brad Wanamaker all got minutes off the bench last night, and they scored a total of 8 points. So, I don't know who's going to step up to replace Gordon Hayward is a big question, because he was a starter for them. They can move Tatum to small forward and then put like Grant Williams or Enes Kanter or Robert Williams in at power forward. And then, or you can maybe put like Romeo Langford at small forward, but he doesn't normally get many minutes. He only had 1 last night. So I don't think that's going to be an option, but he's really the only guy who really plays small forward. So I think their only option is to put someone at power forward, move Tatum to the small forward spot. But, it's just going to be tough, I think, going forward in terms of scoring beyond, their big 3 in Kemba, Tatum, and Brown. I think they're gonna find it difficult to get points from the other guys. So those 3 are all gonna have to step up. Tatum, Brown did it last night. Kemba's gonna have to get up there as well. And then but I still think the Celtics are gonna win the series, just not in as few games as I did before. I'd probably say this could go 7 games now.
Moving on to the next game, which was a controversial one. The Clippers beat the Mavericks 118 to 110. And the reason why this was controversial is because Kristaps Porzingis received 2 technical fouls and was ejected. And people are pretty mad about this because what Kristaps did to get the technical fouls really didn't look like fouls at all, and really didn't look like that they were too big of a deal. A lot of players were talking out about this. One example is LeBron James, who tweeted, quote, "Man, that was bogus as heck, man. Come on, man." And then he put a face palm emoji. I really didn't think that there was anything bad that Kristaps did to deserve these 2 technical fouls, so I'm pretty angry about it. It really seems like the referees are trying to rig it for the LA Conference Final or Western Conference Finals, but there's really nothing that I could do to fix it. I just hope the Mavericks can come back even stronger and probably win a few games.
I mean, I would agree in the sense that I think NBA executives definitely want the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals. They get better ratings and stuff for it. Lakers Clippers would be the best potential matchup for them. But to say that the refs are purposely rigging it, I think would be a little stretch. I think it's just a bad call. Just a bad call. These are the best of the best refs who were invited to the bubble to ref these games. So it's a bad call. I think it was just a mistake.
Well, that doesn't make them the best of the best if they forget that, because I don't agree with you. This definitely is not a good. That's not a bad
People,
call. That's got to be on purpose, man. Or that has
I
to be
mean,
at least swayed a little bit, because no way that anyone would have ever called that a technical if the stakes weren't this high.
I think this definitely did affect the game, though. The Mavericks had a 5-point lead at the time. Kristaps Porzingis took his second technical. Porzingis is a big part of them defensively, so I think that definitely hurt them in terms of defending the paint. And he's also a pretty good threat offensively in terms of post scoring and 3-point shooting. I mean, I think it could go either way, but it's playoff. It's the NBA playoffs. It's playoff basketball. You can't just you can't go strictly by the rules like that. Stuff is gonna get heated, especially because Porzingis was protecting the Mavs' best player, Luka. I don't know. They said it was because he escalated the altercation, but he wasn't really. It didn't really start it either. So I don't know. I just think it's kind of a petty. I think it's it's a pretty petty call. I think it's just a mistake. I guarantee you this will definitely not happen again the rest of the series. But I definitely think it had an effect on the game. Who knows? Maybe the Mavericks would have ended up winning that game. But we'll see as the series goes on. But I mean, the refs made a mistake, but I'm not going to say it's rigged.
I mean, I can see that point of view, but either way, it's still a really disappointing call from the referees there.
Yeah,
That,
definitely.
yeah, that definitely. I really think that the Mavericks would have won that game if Kristaps wasn't ejected. I really think that just changes like the whole like momentum in the series. I think the Clippers are now going in, probably going to come in stronger now that they have a game under their belt, and the Mavericks now have to work their way out of this. So I think it's going to be a lot harder for the Mavericks to win, which kind of just sucks because they really looked like in that game they looked like they looked like a better team until obviously Kristaps was gone. Like you said, he's a big part in their defense, and Luka can't do everything. Luka can't be guarding every player on the court. He could hold up his own on the offense, but he can't guard all five players, especially a player that's going to be a couple inches taller than him and is probably just going to dunk on him. So Kristaps, who's their big man, you really need him there to be successful on defense especially. So I think that really just kind of ruined the game. And, I don't think it's going to happen again, but that was just a really disappointing call.
Yeah, it was definitely a disappointing call. But, in terms of, I think that it's going to be harder for the Mavericks to win the series now. I honestly think this might make them come out stronger, come out with a fire, especially Porzingis, obviously. Because of this, they're probably mad, The same goes for the Lakers game last night. The Lakers are probably people are saying, oh, Lakers are going to come out even stronger game two. I think losses definitely motivate teams. That's why a sweep is relatively rare because teams come out even stronger after a loss. The team that sweeps has to be significantly better than the team that got swept. That's why sweeps are very rare. So I think that after every loss, teams come out stronger. So I think that I'm not going to say it's going to be easier for the Mavericks to win the series, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be any harder either. Moving on into day two of the NBA game ones. The first game that occurred was the Bucks Magic game. A huge upset for the Magic. They won 122 to 110. And if I'm the Bucks, I'm scared right now because Aaron Gordon didn't play, Jonathan Isaac didn't play, and Mo Bamba didn't play either. These are all guys who, with the exception of Eric Gordon, they're not huge parts of the team in any sense. But Aaron Gordon definitely is. That he's the second best player on the Magic in my opinion after Vucevic. But like I said, but they're still getting they're still decent players for them. Jonathan Isaac, he's averaging 28.8 minutes a game, and also getting just under 12 points a game. So that's big. And then Mo Bamba, it's a little bit less. He still gets 14 minutes a game, but I think he's a little bit lesser impact than Jonathan Isaac does. But Aaron Gordon's one of the bigger ones. He gets the most minutes per game out of any Magic player, and he's fourth most in scoring. So I think that with the fact of Aaron Gordon not being there, I think that the Bucks right now, they really need to turn it up. They can't. This is not like the Bucks didn't have Giannis or anything like that. No, the Bucks had their entire starting lineup. They had the majority of their roster. The only guy they're really missing is Ersan Ilyasova, but he originally doesn't get that much minutes to begin with. Giannis, he played 34 minutes. Chris Middleton played 31. Brook Lopez played 29. So they had their core group of guys. But I just think the issue with the Bucks was Chris Middleton, could not get going. He only got 14 points. And then also some of their players struggled from three. DiVincenzo was 0 for 2. Eric Bledsoe was 1 for 5. Brooke Lopez was 0 for 4. So I think that some of the other players' three-point shooting definitely affected them a little bit. But overall, I just think that everyone on that team needs to play better in order to beat this Magic team in these next couple of games in the series.
Yeah, it's a disappointing loss, but I think they're gonna be able to bounce back from it. Like your earlier point, losses make a team stronger. But if they can't shoot the ball effectively, and Aaron Gordon comes back because he is running some 2-on-2s right now. An article came out a few minutes ago saying that he probably won't be ready, but he's getting better after that hard fall against the Raptors. If he comes back and the Bucks still aren't firing on all cylinders, I think that could be a problem because the Bucks probably thought that they could just easily sweep by the Magic, but now they really have to change their game plan and really adjust what they're really going to do because a lot of people thought the Bucks are going to sweep the Magic or at least beat them in 5 games. But now the Bucks really have to be careful with what they're doing, and they really have to win. I say they win this next game if they want to comfortably beat the Magic.
Definitely, I agree with that. And, I should clarify on a statement that I said earlier about Jonathan Isaac and Mo Bamba not being there. They're both out for the season for different reasons. So I'm not saying that they should be scared because they're going to come back. That's not what I was really trying to say. But what I was trying to say is that this is a team that even when those guys are in there, it still were, the 8 seed. They weren't necessarily the best team in these playoffs. They're arguably the worst after the Nets. So that's why I think you should be scared because they came in to the series thinking that they were going to demolish this Magic team. But obviously, they're not going to sweep them anymore. And based on that game, that's why I think they should be like, oh, this Magic team is better than we thought, even without these guys. So that's what I meant to say. And then obviously, Aaron Gordon's coming back, along with also Michael Carter-Williams, who I forgot to mention. The next game that occurred, day 2, was the Heat and Pacers game. The Heat won 113-101 because of a huge performance by Jimmy Butler down the stretch. He hit 2 clutch threes and also a nice mid-range jumper late in the game. What's really impressive to me about that was, I think Jimmy Butler all year struggled with his three-pointers. He shoots around 25% from 3, and he also, hadn't made a 3 since March 2nd until those 2. So those 2 down the stretch, especially that off-balance one, were very impressive. I think it has a lot to do with confidence, but I think he did get a little lucky. I will say that. I don't think he's going to be able to do that consistently during the series. I think they might have to. They're not going to be able to. I don't think they're going to be able to go to him consistently for late game threes. But we'll see. Maybe because Jimmy Butler, he's an exceptional player, and those types of players, they always are. Most of them are better in the clutch, so he might be one of those guys who's just an exceptional player in the clutch. So, like I said, we'll see as the series goes on. But I will say one thing before I let you speak, Jack. I think if the Pacers had Domantas Sabonis in the series, I think this would be I'm not a lock for the Pacers to win, but I think it'd be a lot easier for the Pacers to win. I'd predict them winning in 6, maybe not 5. I'd say 6. And I wouldn't give the Heat that much of a chance of winning. It's Domantas Sabonis being gone for the Pacers is the same thing as Bam being gone for the Heat. That's to give you perspective. People forget that Domantas Sabonis is not on the Pacers. If he was there, I think that game would have gone differently. I think the series overall be differently. Miles Turner, he's a good defensive player in the paint. He gets a lot of blocks, but I think sometimes that's the problem, that he goes for 2 blocks too many times. I saw it multiple times under 4 minutes last game. He let a guy get in position so he could go for the block, and then he'd miss, and then the guy would have an easy bucket because instead of getting in front of them, he'd try to go from the side and try to get there and set him up in the best position to get a block. But, he just got to try to force a miss, I feel like. Some of these guys are a foot shorter than him, so I think if Domantas Sabonis was there, stuff like that would be a lot different. And also, Oladipo obviously went out early in that game with his little eye injury. We don't know much about that yet. We don't know if he's going to be ready tomorrow to go or, how serious the injury is. I just looked like he kind of got scraped. So we'll see. He doesn't. The Pacers don't really probably have the proper people to treat it right now in the bubble. But I feel like they probably will be able to make something do, and Oladipo will be back in action in no time. Jack, what are your thoughts on this game?
I agree with your points. I don't think that the Pacers would, like you said, they didn't have it on lock, but I think it'd be a closer series if they had Sabonis back. Probably still taking it, but I'd say 7. Like, I know you're a Pacers fan, but if I'm being completely honest, I think it wouldn't be a lock for the Pacers. I think it'd be an interesting series. Overall, the Pacers are gonna have a rough time without Sabonis, but I still think they could probably win. But the Heat are still my favorite to win, and probably still would be my favorite if they had Sabonis, even though they'd probably be an underdog. I could see the Pacers coming back in the next game and probably taking it. But it's just gonna be an interesting series, and it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with the Pacers.
All right, next game. OKC Houston. The Houston Rockets beat the Thunder 123-108. Very impressive for Houston. Obviously, without Russell Westbrook, this was going to be hard. James Harden stepped up and had 37 points along with 11 rebounds. And then Eric Gordon also 21. And then coming off the bench, Jeff Green had 22 points, the surprise of the game. And then OKC, Gallinari at 29, with the exception of him. I think the Rockets were really able to hold the Thunder in check in terms of their stars scoring points. No, Shai only scored 9. Chris Paul had 20, which is a reasonable amount, but on the season he's averaging 17. So I think he scored more than season average, but they did good to not let him get carried away with the scoring, along with Steven Adams only scoring 17. I think if they can keep those 3 guys at or under 20 all series, this could potentially be a sweep, but the thing is they have to do that every single game, which I don't think they will be able to do. What are your thoughts on this game, Jack?
So, this is exactly what I wanted to see out of the Rockets. I did have the Thunder winning 1 or 2 games, but this is really what the Rockets needed. I think they're gonna get Russ back soon. So if they can just keep playing like this, and it's pretty much a lock for the series. But I think the Rockets have this after seeing the Thunder and how they performed. If the Rockets could play good defense and, hold those 3 players, like you said, under, say, 20 points, I think this pretty much is a lock on the series. You can't really write the Thunder off, especially with what Jeter said in the interview last episode. But, I really think the Rockets have this easily.
All right. Yeah, I think this will still. I predict it still goes 5 games, maybe 6. I don't really predict this week, but we'll see as it goes on. I think it's definitely a possibility. And then let's move into the storied game from last night: Lakers versus Trailblazers. The Trailblazers came away with the upset victory. They were able to win 100-93. I would like to say that I think the Lakers did a great job defensively, holding the Trailblazers to 100 points, their lowest point total of their bubble run, by far. But they struggled offensively, which we saw in the seeding games during the bubble for the Lakers. They were struggling offensively. I think they might have been a little lethargic. They might have not been ready for the playoffs. I think that probably had something to do with them not being able to score that much. I think because most of the games were meaningless during the seeding games. So I think they just need to step it up in terms of energy, and also 3-point shooting. Definitely, I think a lot of those guys might be maybe a little rusty, maybe because the seeding games they didn't have to put on a full show. AD was 0 for 5 from 3. LeBron was 1 for 5. KCP was 0 for 5. Kuz was 1 for 5, and Caruso was 0 for 3. The only person who really shot well from deep was Danny Green, who's 2 for 8, which still isn't like in outstanding numbers. That's 25%, but it's the best. I mean, besides Markieff Morris, but he only shot 1 3 and he made it. It's the best besides him. So, if the Lakers can step it up in terms of 3-point shooting and energy, I think they can come back in the series and really come back strong next game.
So everyone loves to blame LeBron and blame him for what happens in these games. But, this really wasn't a problem with LeBron. LeBron put up 23, 17, and 16, which is just a crazy stat line. So it really wasn't Bron's fault. I think if you had to blame someone, it'd be KCP and Danny Green. I think they just had a disappointing game. Also with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis has been playing like he's an elite shooter, which he's an amazing shooter. He's good. He's a good shooter, but he really is just a center slash power forward. So I think he really needs to get into the paint more because that's how he like established himself to begin with. I think if they can just pick up their 3-point shooting, like you said, LeBron had a good game, Kuzma had a good game. I think it's just people have been shooting poorly and they haven't been efficient. So I think we really just need to fix Danny Green and KCP right now. And I think putting in Dion Waiters and JR more probably wouldn't hurt just to see how they're going to play. But the Lakers really need to step up their shooting for this next game, or else it could be a problem.
Yeah, Waiters only had 1 minute last game, and JR had 0. So putting them in could benefit the Lakers. I think I'd put Quinn Cook in over JR personally. He didn't have any minutes last night either. He's a great 3-point shooter. And, on the topic of AD, you can't really blame AD for the loss last night. He had 28 points and 11 rebounds, and he got to the line 17 times, and made 12 of those free throw attempts. So I think he had a good game, but I do think he could have even, in order to help the team's success, I think, he was a guard in high school. He played as a guard, and then he had a massive growth spurt towards the end of his high school and beginning of college. So I think that he definitely has some skills like a guard, in terms of shooting and stuff, ball handling with height. Ball handling just it's harder. The taller you get, the harder ball handling is because the ball needs to travel farther. But so I think AD does have certain skills like a guard, but he still is a center power forward, which is what he's best at. And I think if he can get, like you said, get down the paint more, keep on drawing fouls like he is, then I think that'd really benefit the Lakers a tremendous amount, and it would help them come away with the series. And I would like to ask you a question here. Rondo was medically returned to play a couple of days ago. He was able to play game 1. He just wasn't played because Frank Vogel wanted to take it day by day and see how he continues to progress. With his rhythm and timing and all that and stuff, and he deemed him not ready to play game 1. So he's probably I expect Rondo to play. But because Vogel did say last night when he released that, Rondo was not going to play. He did say he was close to being ready. So we'll see. I hope he is able to play for the good of the Lakers, and I think he will end up playing. Do you have any thoughts on this, Jack?
I think it's just like this is pretty big news because Rondo was an important part of the Lakers. Losing Avery Bradley was pretty tough. I think now there's just some questions really with the starting 5. I don't think I think we're fine. It's just that we're not playing as well as we should be. But Rondo's an important playmaker. He's an important leader in the locker room. He's a natural leader. So I think just having Rondo back is pretty good, regardless of if he's playing or not. But I think it's going to be better if he's playing because he's not the best scorer, but he is a pretty decent shooter, and he is, I'd say, not an elite playmaker anymore, but that was really his the main aspect of his game, especially in his prime, was his passing and playmaking. So I think this is really important for the Lakers. And if he can get like I'd say 10 assists or more, it's going to be pretty good for the Lakers.
Yeah, Rondo has lots of playoff experience, and also I'd say he's still an elite playmaker. When LeBron's out, and Rondo isn't playing, we don't really have a guy to facilitate the ball that much. So I think Rondo, now that Rondo's here, that's going to help out the Lakers a ton. I predict he's probably going to be coming off the bench for the same reason I just mentioned, so that when LeBron leaves the game, he can come in and be that ball distributor. The only other guy I could really think of that could really do that is Caruso, but even still, Caruso's more of like, I'd say he can play point, but I'd say he's still more of a natural shooting guard. He's more of a catch and shoot, and he's a 3-and-D. That's what he is. Him and Danny Green are both like 3-and-D players. The lottery odds, the official lottery odds, after tiebreakers and everything were released. We've known some stuff, top 3, Warriors, Cavs, and Timberwolves all have a 14% chance of obtaining the number 1 pick. Hawks have a 12.5%. Have a 12.5% chance. The Pistons have a 10.5% chance. Knicks 9%. Bulls 7.5%. And then Hornets, Wizards, Suns, Spurs, Kings Pelicans, Grizzlies. That's the order after the Kings and Pelicans tiebreaker. The Kings were able to edge out the Pelicans. The tiebreakers, they don't make that much of a difference as far down as Kings and Pelicans are. It's 1.3 and 1.2% difference for the number one pick. So I have a question. I have a couple questions for you. First and foremost, the Warriors, obviously they had a bunch of injuries this season with Curry and Clay both being out, but we still know that Curry and Clay are both elite scorers, and especially their shooting. We both know they're still star players in the league, and the Warriors also still have Draymond Green, and they now have Andrew Wiggins, and they also have young Eric Paschall, who had a very good season this season. So if the Warriors were to obtain the number one pick, as their record might suggest, being the worst team in the league record-wise, who should they pick? And also, how would that affect their chances of maybe potentially winning the championship next year? What seed do you think they might be able to finish? And how good of a chance do you think they have to go all the way?
Okay, so if they did get the first pick, it's kind of tough for the Warriors because they don't really need a guard. But the two players that I would pick would be, not in any order, Onyeka Okongwu, probably to replace an aging Draymond Green because his play has really gone down in the past few seasons. I mean, he still has some play left in him because he's only 30 years old, so I think he has a few more years. But, probably the best pick for them would be James Wiseman. Most people would probably say James Wiseman. He is, in my opinion, the best center in the draft. He's 7'1". He can put up 30 points per game easily and over like 10 rebounds. I think if he could just bring up his assists, he'd be a great player, but he can put up double doubles pretty easily. So I think that James Wiseman would be a great part because he is a good defender and really good on offense. So I think just adding more onto that really skilled Warriors team, especially with Andrew Wiggins now, I think they could be an amazing team, and I think they definitely are a championship contender. I think they are a championship contender even without him, probably not a favorite, probably like lower seeding, but I still think that if they get the first pick, this could be big if they grab James Wiseman.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, even Anthony Edwards wouldn't be a bad pick. They definitely have, obviously, they have Curry and Clay and Wiggins who could all play guard positions. But, Curry and Clay are both getting a little bit older. They're both getting into their 30s. So Anthony Edwards would be a terrible pick. They could start him off on the bench his first couple of seasons. And then maybe even they could potentially trade away one of Curry or Clay. I'm not saying that they should, but if Anthony Edwards does seem to be a really good player, say he comes off the bench and he starts scoring like double digits and he's very efficient and all that, they could potentially trade away, a Curry or a Clay for more draft picks in the future to help build a young team around Anthony Edwards and Eric Paschall, and Wiggins is still young. So I think Anthony Edwards would be a terrible pick if I'm the Warriors, because I feel like they could definitely go into win now mode soon. I think that if they want to go win now, I think James Wiseman would be a good pick because he could potentially start for them at center. But I wouldn't be surprised if they also went Anthony Edwards just because, in my opinion, he's the best player in the draft. And a lot of people also think that for good reason. So we'll see where it goes. I just think I would definitely stay off LaMelo Ball. I don't know. I just kind of avoided LaMelo Ball completely this draft if they get the number one pick. And if they did get the number one pick and they do get a rookie that pays off, I'd say that they could honestly, this season, I thought with Clay being gone and it just being Curry, but Curry's obviously out for nearly half the season, I thought they'd be contending for the get into the playoffs, kind of be like a 7-8 or just miss the playoffs. Obviously, that did not happen, but I think with getting Clay back and also having fully Curry and a rookie, number one pick rookie, I think that they could. I mean, I'm not going to go as far to say they could maybe take a top 3 seed, but I think they'd definitely be up there with the Nuggets, Clippers, and Lakers and Rockets. As one of the top teams in the West. The West is always has been stacked for the last decade. I think with the Warriors being back next year, hopefully, it's going to get even more stacked.
Yeah, and this is just a really tough spot for the Warriors because even if they do grab a center, they still have Kevon Looney, who's only 24, and Marquise Chris, who's 23. So it's just really tough because they have young players at center who are pretty good. So I think the only position they might want to fix is probably power forward with Draymond Green, but he's not that old either. So it's just kind of a tough spot. I really don't know what they can do. If they're thinking of the future, get a guard. But if they're in win now mode, either power forward or center.
All right, time for the final segment of today's episode. Question of the episode. Today's question of the episode is realistically, so something that you genuinely think is a possibility, you think it could actually happen. What is the biggest potential upset that could occur during the NBA playoffs?
Realistically speaking, this isn't really a huge upset. I mean, in my opinion, it's not a huge upset, but I think the Mavericks stealing this series from the Clippers, it's going to be a lot harder after game one. But really looking at the Mavericks, they really pushed the Clippers in that game, obviously, until Kristaps was ejected. I'm pretty sure they were up by 5 points. It's going to be close. It's going to be a close series. They're going to have a bunch of close games. So I think the Mavericks can really take this from the Clippers, and I think they could really – I think that could probably be one of the biggest upsets because I realistically don't see like the Nets actually winning a series, or I don't see realistically the Magic actually winning a series, but I really do see the Mavericks having a chance to beat the Clippers in this series.
Yeah, I'd say the Magic have a chance with Aaron Gordon coming back and being able to win that first game, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think there'll still probably be 5 games, maybe 6, who knows. I think the two biggest upsets are the 1 and 2 seeds, maybe possibly the upset in the West, with the Lakers and the Clippers potentially being upset. Clippers by the Mavericks, Lakers by the Trailblazers. Those are the two biggest things for me in terms of upsets by seeding. So if I had to choose the biggest upset by seeding, it'd be the Blazers upsetting the Lakers or Magic Bucks. I think has a chance, but I'm not really too positive on that one. But that's pretty much going to be it for the episode, guys. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, following, whatever. Show your support based on what platform you're watching us on. And, remember to leave suggestions down below in the comment section, for top 10 countdowns, prediction addictions, anything that we could potentially talk about. Maybe you agree or disagree with us about something we talked about today. Let us know your opinion. And have a great day. We'll see you in the next episode.